Good evening and welcome to Momentous Live, episode, if you can believe it, 50. We made it to 50.
What? I forgot. I should have
50
got
years
balloons.
I'm 50. I like to kick and stretch and also kick.
And kick.
I am Tristan Jutra.
50. I'm Tasia Custodi. And below me is...
I'm Gray Williams.
I'm William Silver.
Do you need to attend to some bodily functions?
I was just too excited.
Wow. Yes, you can learn more about us at Momentous if you want to at this point at momentous.tv, twitter.com/momentous.tv, facebook.com/momentous.tv, instagram.com/momentous.tv. And for YouTube, search my name and look for the Momentous playlists there. Let's get right to it, shall we? Starting with a little... What?
Tristan, weren't you going to say smash the bell, smash the table?
Don't encourage that.
Punch a kitten, whatever you got to do.
Kick your dog.
We don't endorse dog kicking.
No, or the kitten punching.
You're killing me, Smalls. Back to the stories.
We're all going to get canceled this time.
Yeah.
Okay, back to it. Yeah, it's just a little bit of recap because, you know, it's a day ending and why. More Wordle news. It's becoming a regular segment here on Momentous Live for some reason. People in the wordleverse today were losing their minds because some people had one answer that was working and the other people had another answer that was working. What was going on? Well, it turns out that New York Times is in the process of migrating Wordle over, since they bought Wordle a few weeks ago, migrating over to their platform. But the original Wordle is still working on its platform too, and they are slightly out of sync because the New York Times has made all sorts of changes, which we will link in the show notes. And they've removed a bunch of words and so on. So everything's going to be out of sync for a bit. And I think eventually the original Wordle may be deprecated. But for those so just quick round robin here, Tasia, I'm starting with Tasia. Who of us is still playing or Wordle or has played or has never played Wordle at all?
I've never played. Brett
Okay.
plays. I never have ever.
Wow.
Same. I don't play. Naomi plays.
I was Wordle curious for a little while. I dabbled in Wordle for a couple of days and then decided it really wasn't for me. So, yeah, not really Wordle flexible at this point.
Is there really a term, or did you just make it up? The wordleverse.
Oh, well, that's part of
Is it going to cross over with
creative
the
geniuses here at
Marvel
Momentous.
MCU?
So here's the thing, though. That's actually very, very accurate because this is the point where our two universes diverge into the standard universe and the mirror universe.
Yes.
So you'll notice because I've got a bit of a goatee going on, I'm actually the evil me. Yeah, original Wordleverse. Yeah.
You need a sash.
Yeah.
It's strange.
And that's a
Gray.
baldric, actually. It's called a baldric.
Okay.
The weirdest thing about this to me was, like, why is this news? Like, if you guys read the article, it's like they interviewed this husband who is like, my wife had like a different answer than I did. Like, I don't care.
And now we're divorced.
Right?
This is garbage.
This whole fight. How could this be? And then people are complaining that, like, it's changed or it's not as good, on the New York Times platform. And New York Times is like, it's the same game. Like, we didn't change the game.
But everything has to be two-sided now, right? Like, you've got to pick colors. And so we've got like original Wordle folks, and we've got the NYT stands. And so now here's the thing. This is what Wordle was missing, was the dichotomy
Culture war.
and the culture, just people who absolutely just somewhere to vent their rage. That's thank you, New York Times. We were missing that in the acrostic word puzzle.
And that's why
we were
can't
united
nice
for a
things.
short period of time, and now we got to argue over the color of our Wordle portal.
So here's the thing. It's like Independence Day, right? Everybody came together for the end of the movie, and then 20 years later, destroyed it with a sequel. There it is.
Oh,
Is
don't even
it
get me
just
started.
me, or are we becoming more and more like Gulliver's Travels, where it's like we're arguing about which side of the bread that we're buttering?
Yeah, and that's why again we can't have nice things. And we had our week of pure internet loveliness, and then capitalism
I
wins
feel
again.
for that reporter.
So
That's the job you got to cover.
so not to dwell too long on this because we've got lots of other stuff to talk about. But yeah, Quentin, yeah, hey, Skippy, you're new to the job. You get the Wordle beat. Oh,
I got a
thanks,
hot beat for you.
Give me
but for
descriptions
those,
of Spider-Man.
so
Yeah.
so for those who are, still looking for more Wordle type goodness, in the past we've talked about literal. If you want to guess a single letter a day, we've talked about absurdal, the adversarial style version of Wordle. But now they're coming fast and furious. Now there's Dordle, which is a more evil Wordle, challenging you to tackle 2 words at once, and there's all sorts of rules related to there. And then, of course, we have Quordle. If 2 games at once isn't enough, how about guessing 4 words simultaneously? And if that's not enough for you, how about you play Squabble? And then, again, speaking of culture wars, you can turn Wordle into a battle royale. So we go from culture wars to actual online gaming wars, and then we'll have our next Gamergate, and then we'll be right down the toilet again.
Come up with your own ideas, people.
Well, that's the problem. Is the New York Times isn't iterating fast enough. They got to innovate. Come on, move fast and break things, guys.
No, this is like, bless all these people trying to make a quick buck or something by
Yes, bless
copying.
Them. Bless them right in the ear.
Oh,
Shameless coattail writing.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's fun. Like, I get it. The appeal of Wordle is fun. It's simple, just one thing a day, and then you can move on. But all these other things have jumped in to fill in the void for people who just can't get enough. And it kind of defeats the whole purpose. But, it's okay for people to like things. And that's what we're all about here, is liking things until we stop liking them, and then
until we don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Until we vote things momentous.
Exactly.
And it moves us all.
Okay, so we've got just a handful of space stories. Luckily, we have momentous space correspondent Ray Williams on probably the most out of this world beat around.
Oh.
So let's not beat around the bush, and let's get right to it. Astronomers discovered a new asteroid sharing Earth's orbit. That doesn't sound ominous at all.
It's kind of cool, though.
God.
So this one's in our orbit. It's ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like the Silver Surfer before Galactus. This thing is cruising on ahead of us. And it's, we're,
So it's not coming towards us?
No, we're doing the same thing. We're kind of doing this as we go around, right?
That's cool,
and
then.
So, yeah. Really neat. It's wobbling in and out of our orbit, which is like out of the axis of our orbit, which is, it's cool, but the problem here is if we want to land on it, trying to intersect with that is a little bit more challenging, right? Because you're basically tracking an orbit that's not quite ours. There's gonna be a delta, and anyway, it's my thought here, and it would make a terrible science fiction movie. Is you send a probe past it with a big old harpoon, and you stick it and kind of back in. NASA doesn't return my calls, so neat. And there are things here that we could possibly mine, but the other thought here is if we could land on it, this actually could be a jumping off point for us. Basically get to this point, load this thing up with fuel or whatever else that we need to basically break our own existing orbit. And now you've got something that is outside of our gravity well, that is, a great base to take off from. Again, because of that wobble in and out of our orbit, it's not ideal, but when has that ever stopped humanity? It's not ideal.
Never.
We'll make this work.
And for those playing the momentous drinking game at home, we have yet another mention of Lagrange points.
There it is.
So, Greg, can you just once again give us a quick recap of what Lagrange points are? There are a couple of stable ones and a couple of unstable ones. And this particular asteroid, is it in one of these Lagrange points?
Yeah, so essentially, a Lagrange point is a point in space around which you can orbit, and sort of that in and out motion that it has from our orbit, it's orbiting inside that space. So, a stable Lagrange point is what you're ideally looking for to orbit around, because at that point, your orbit is not something that we need to question. We don't have to calculate it. We have to worry about it coming off of that orbit and doing something, to Stasia's point, potentially ruinous. So this does look stable. And so looking at that and looking at, other things in the system, Unstable ones are really the ones where like quantum computing is probably going to be helpful in calculating the trajectory of a bunch of these things. I don't know if I think a few of you watched the last season of The Expanse.
I'm still between 3 and 4 myself.
Okay. Well. There is a point at which we're looking at the solar system and things being tracked through that. And you think the future and space and sensors and all sorts of good stuff. You would have an idea of where everything is inside the solar system. The solar system is huge. And even when we can get sensors out there, we'll never be able to actually cover all of the space. And this is why being able to record where something is and which direction it's moving, how fast it's moving, is essential to our survival as a species, because that's how we're going to see the things that are going to hit us. So, all of these things that we're doing right now, where we're not in a critical situation, we're not in a don't look up situation, is actually incredibly valuable for us, because we're getting the math under our belt and we're getting the computation under our belt to understand how things out there work.
So if we decide to mess around with this asteroid and then things go horribly wrong and then we end up with a bunch of additional space junk in our own orbit, in addition to the man-made space junk that we're enjoying now, especially the astronomers on Earth and those wanting to send other vehicles or observation satellites and whatnot into orbit, there is a firm planning 100,000 satellites. So let's clean up space junk by adding more space junk, claiming they will clean space by capturing debris. Now, several months ago, we had been talking about an initiative that Steve Wozniak was working on, and we thought at the time that had to do with space junk, and the story wasn't actually quite that clear. But eSpace claims that its satellites will capture debris to prevent future collisions. Now, it's one of these situations where it's hard for us to wrap our minds around. Grant, you had mentioned like space is big, but the space around the Earth is only so big. I mean, it's 3D space, but so you think, well, there's lots of room there. What's a bit of space junk? But these things are all moving at very high velocities, and if you are out of sync with those velocities and you hit a collision, even something that very, very tiny could actually inflict quite a lot of damage on your own craft. So is this sort of initiative by eSpace, by sending 100,000 of their own satellites, in addition to the several thousand that SpaceX is doing with Starlink and all the other initiatives, and then some nation states blowing up their own old things like China, and then supposedly the the ISS is going to be, I guess that's an international consortium, is going to be crashing the ISS into the ocean eventually. Hopefully that doesn't go horribly wrong. Now, is sending up 100,000 satellites with part of the aim being to clean up space junk, is that going to work, or is this misguided going to cause more problems?
See, that's a toss with a question. So if you're asking my opinion, I think anything that we can do right now to clean up that layer of the atmosphere that's starting to really clog up with stuff is probably not a terrible thing. But adding that kind of volume does make me slightly concerned. I mean, the idea here is that these things will actually, make contact with the space junk, and by, a variety of different methods, basically make it irrelevant by either burning it down into the atmosphere or pushing it out. It's almost a little bit like crokinole, where you're basically like using one object to kind of bounce something out into the atmosphere. Looking at this, like we have to do something. I'd always picture something like, have you seen the skimmers that they have in the harbor, which are basically like trash bins that have a small vacuum pump running through them, so they're basically pumping water in and out. So they suck things in, they take on the waste and push the rest out. And I'd always kind of pictured maybe that was sort of our solution. But if you can play billiards in space with these things and it works, that's 100,000 pieces of space junk, if not more, that we can get rid of. And I think that's probably a good idea.
Meanwhile, hopefully we can keep working on the enormous plastic garbage patch in the Pacific Ocean. That's a whole different ball of fish.
We crash the space junk into that and they burn up anyway. Call Jerry Bruckheimer, he'll do it.
Also, we've got some robots being put to the test for eventual moon landings. It's hard to believe. We as a species have not been back to the moon in person since the early 70s. The U.S. diverted its resources into the space shuttle program, which was great in its own ways, but then kind of almost got caught in a loop there. We had the ISS, which is great, but we never went back to the heavenly bodies so much, and you'd think the moon would be a natural place for launching off into new missions, eventually getting to Mars and whatnot. So there's just a little video here of some of the testing that is going on. Thankfully, that more research is being done into getting getting us back on to the moon and having some devices that will help us in the meantime. What, Gray, in your mind, is the most important aspects or features of a robot that is going to be operating on an extraterrestrial surface, basically something that's not on Earth? What does it need to be able to do on the surface of another planet? And what are the sort of the things that we need to account for, given that any sort of remote control we're going to do is always going to have a lag, especially when we're pushing off into places like Mars and whatnot. What does an ideal rover look like in terms of its features and self-sufficiency?
Well, it kind of depends on the surface that we're landing on. If we take a look at the Mars rovers that lasted well beyond their lifespan, and the only reason that their lifespan actually terminated was supposed to be 90 days, and I think ended up being like countless years in the case of one of them.
They kept roving.
Right. And I mean, Roving Mars, actually, it's out on Disney Plus right now, was a movie that I saw with my dad my second day here in Vancouver at the IMAX theater at Canada Place. And I can't remember if it's Pure Curiosity, but one of them. And these things were still running at the end. Well, one of them was still running at the end of the film and did continue to go on. I think it was only 2 or 3 years ago that it stopped actually functioning. And the reason that it did was because dust had finally covered that solar panel. Landing on the moon, that regolith is it's abrasive and very damaging. So looking at two very different things. On Mars, you have more of a rocky surface and dust gets blown around by the atmosphere that's there. We don't have that on the moon. So being, I know it sounds silly, dust resistant, the ability to actually clean their solar panels would be two things that I would look for. If we're looking at something maybe a little bit more revolutionary, and we're starting to see it now, AI. Being able to give the rover a task that it is then able to accomplish. If it doesn't, have a human who's able to actually come in and control it by telemetry. Between that and the ability for one of these things to actually self-replicate, so having all of the features on board to build another one, that actually is probably the most interesting thing for me, because you could launch one of these things at an asteroid or at a surface that has the materials to be mined, where you could basically turn it into another one of itself. And then those 2 turn into 2 copies, and those 4 turn it into 4 copies. And by the end of 30 days, I think you've got something that's outweighing the population of the Earth. So, kind of neat.
And everything is gray goo.
Everything is great. It's just nanobots all the way down. But yeah, I mean, that hardiness is important. Whether you're on the moon or you're on Mars, if we're trying to landing on Venus, you'll melt lead on the surface. So you'd have to actually stay in the upper atmosphere, where it's a little bit not melty.
Speaking of melting things, there's a reclining, quote-unquote, alien figure in a NASA Mars rover image that looks like a shirtless Jeff Goldblum from Jurassic Park.
Well,
Will, what do you think?
There it is.
So specific.
Is this... Will, does life find a way?
I do love me some Jeff Goldblum, I have to say.
Right? So that's why I throw to you on this. Is this image Jeff Goldblum or a near relative reclining on the surface of Mars? Or is just this something else? Is this internet stupidity?
No, I think it's a cat. I think it's a space cat.
Oh,
A cat.
unexpected take.
Thank you.
Twist. All
What a
right.
twist.
Who could they get so detailed? A sweat. Now you can tell it's a sweaty Jeff Goldblum. Oh, come on.
Is there any other kind when they're reclining? And it's not sweaty. Glistening is the word we're looking for.
Glistening. Like it's obviously a shadow, correct?
Well, think of all the ink that's been spilled, digital and otherwise, on the pyramid on Mars, the face on Mars, all that sort of thing. And this is the next iteration now that we've got actual rovers on there getting more close-up images of things. And it's another example of humans' just ability to like pattern match and see things everywhere. And that's like, I mean, it's served us well throughout our evolution, but
Just
it
send
gets to a
it
point
closer.
Say
Send
that
it
again?
over closer.
Yeah. And we'll see if it's
And
actually Jeff Goldblum.
actually get a close shot. What is this so far away?
I don't know. You drive up to that thing and suddenly beside you, 2 velociraptors. Clever girl. It's all over.
To be fair, no one's ever seen this supposed reclining figure and Jeff Goldblum at the same in the same place at the same time. So,
Right.
never know. All right. In other sciencey kind of news, and this one really spoke to me, so we'll just quickly touch on this. Record-breaking 58-foot rogue wave detected off Vancouver Island last fall, but they've done more analysis to it. This story was posted today at, wait for it, 4:20 p.m. Rogue wave, dude. So 58-footer. They figure this is like the once in a millennium type event. It appeared off the coast of Ucluelet, British Columbia, formerly known for incessant nonstop rain, now known for storm watching. So it actually happened November 17th, 2020. So it was about almost a year and a half ago. The most extreme rogue wave ever recorded. Probability of the event occurring once in about 1,300 years. So
Patrick Swayze is dead? No,
oh,
he's not there to ride the wave.
oh, make me sad. Patrick Swayze. So yes,
Break?
so
No?
yes, that was the Point Break. Yes. Speaking of which,
we
quick
gotcha.
aside, did anyone ever see one of the last series he was in? I think it was on HBO. It was called The
Yes.
Beast.
Yeah, I watched that.
Great
It was good.
series. Yeah. Anyhow, so I'll tell you why this is kind of a thing for me, and I want to get your thoughts on. I'll just give a quick spoiler on when you have been the most afraid of something, of some sort of natural occurrence. And I'll start to give you some time to think about this. Is that, as you may know, my father was a commercial fisherman most of his life, and as he likes to say, he knows fish. But during his time on the boats, he encountered all sorts of interesting phenomena, natural and otherwise. And he encountered at least one rogue wave and another similar phenomenon that occurred to me when I saw this story. So back in the mid 70s, when did he say it was? I was messaging with him earlier today. He was on the boat. He was fishing for someone else at the time. There was a big storm of about 80 knots. So say like roughly 80 mile an hour winds coming across Hecate Strait. So that's between the coast of BC, British Columbia, toward the Queen Charlotte Islands, also known as Haida Gwaii. And he had been at the wheel for 8 hours while everyone else was in their bunks, catching up. And that's back in the day when they would have one person at a time on wheel watch, which isn't necessarily best practice. Mm-hmm. And they were only 10 miles away from the islands, and there was a big swell, just the natural up and down. And Hecate Strait there's a reason why it's named Hecate, Queen of the Witches. It's gnarly with the winds and the tides there. So just about 10 minutes away from the shore of Haida Gwaii, there was a big swell. This wave came out of nowhere and laid the ship he was on its beam end, so right over on its side. The engineer was sleeping on one side, like everyone was down in the forecastle in the bunks. He slammed over to onto the other side of the boat and had a rude awakening. So people were not happy. Of course, the skipper came shooting up out of his stateroom, wanted to know what the heck was going on and whatnot. And that wave, that was a pretty serious situation. And that wave was only about 25 to 30 feet. Mm-hmm. So, say almost 10 meters. So imagine like double that and what that could do to the kind of vessel that you were on. And then another story that I was thinking of involving my dad that I thought was a rogue wave, but it wasn't. It was actually a case where I think it was probably about 15 years ago. And he was skippering a boat. I don't think it was his own boat at the time. It was another fish boat. And he ended up in a trough, like you're in the swell, but sometimes you end up going boof into a trough. And it was almost as if it's almost as if it's a rogue wave. And then what happened is it blew in the windows and fried all the electronics. And then you're like standing back, making sure like you don't get electrocuted and all that kind of stuff. Now, on my time on the boats over the decades, as just a Joe boy or the deckhand on a few seasons on fishing boats and unpacking vessels, had some pretty serious swells and whatnot. And there's you're on a big ocean with a tiny vessel, and you're even a tinier person inside that vessel, and you can feel pretty vulnerable. And you start to making peace with your creator, whatever you understand him, her, it to be, and just make sure, just because you never know, right? So, and that was probably the closest I've ever gotten to be like, oh my gosh, this might be it. one of the boats I was on, a 100-foot old former tuna boat that had been converted to a packing vessel named the Lana Janine. I think it was either Portuguese and or Filipino origin. It may have been built in one place but served in another area. It had a little chapel on board, so that was handy too if you're inclined that way. So I go to you, starting with you, Tasia. What natural occurrence has gotten you feeling the most concerned or straight up afraid for your life that you have ever survived through, or if you indeed survive and you're not actually just a brain in a jar and we're just talking in the metaverse here?
You'll never know. I honestly can't think of one because I grew up in Ontario and not much really happens there in terms of like winter weather we get, but
and they fixed the acid rain before you were born, so
yeah, like natural occurrence, no. Like there's been car things, but that's not like a natural. Do you know what I mean?
Okay, well, tell us about the car thing.
Well, no, like car accidents. Like that's always scary where you're like, I could die.
How many have you been in? Come on.
A few. I wasn't driving.
Sure. Okay.
Sure. But yeah, I mean, nothing like a natural. I would freak out if I was on a boat and that stuff was happening. Did have bad turbulence once on a flight, and I thought I was gonna die. Well, but is that a natural occurrence? I'm in a man-made plane.
Well, no, I was on a man-made boat. Yeah, it's natural. You're at the mercy of Mother Nature there. So what was that like for you? Like, how long did it last?
I was actually flying from Vancouver to Toronto. Mm-hmm. And I don't really sleep on flights, but I was like, trying to do the doze off thing. And it was an overnight for some dumb reason why I picked that. And for some reason, I remember there being a storm, which makes no sense because if we were as high as we would have been, wouldn't we have been above the clouds? But anyway, woke up to awful turbulence, like everything shaking, and like the carts shaking, and you could hear all this stuff, and people were like started whispering, and I'm thinking, this is my worst fear. Like I'm gonna die. The guy beside me was so nice. But like I was like, I'm about to hold this man's hand. Like I was just like, I don't know what is gonna happen. It was like maybe 45 seconds.
Wow.
And then it stopped, and then it was a couple and then it was fine. And they were like, they came on the speaker and they're like, oh, we're going through some turbulent, whatever. And I was like, my family will never know like how long the torture lasted before we died. That's my thing about planes, you guys, because I am afraid to fly, even though I fly a lot, is like I'm very morbidly obsessed with like when you hear of these disasters, I need to know exact down to the second of like when something happens and they're going down, have you already passed out? How long are you freaking out for before you realize like what's going to happen? Like, is it like a 5-second thing? Is it minutes and you're doing this? And that would just
Did I pack clean underwear?
Seriously. So that was my biggest scare, was like bad turbulence.
I've got one.
I mean, you could wait your turn or you could go now. Okay. Your choice.
Greg can go first.
No, please.
We're trying to go clockwise here, but go ahead, Will. Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I thought this was like
the new routine.
And just jump in.
Yeah. Do it.
So I don't know if any of you guys have heard the story. It happened a long time ago, so I've told it a few times. But I was living on the 26th floor of an apartment at the time, and I got in the elevator, and it started going down, and then it just lost all control and free fell for about 3 or 4 floors. It felt like 45 floors, but it was only 2 or 3 floors. But I have to tell you, like you're saying, Tasia, like you think you're gonna die. It's like free falling in an elevator. You feel like you're gonna, like, you imagine the situation and you think you might scream. I just kind of quietly grabbed the side and said to myself, this is how I die. That was like all that happened. I didn't make a noise. I just like, this is me dying. This is how I die. So, and it turned out, so I got to the bottom and there was a maintenance guy. Oh, he's like, I didn't know anyone was in there. I'm sorry. And I'm
my God,
I'm
you were
so
alone?
like stunned. I'm like, okay. I just got out of the elevator.
Hope you got a mop, buddy.
Yeah. You won't want to go in there for a while.
Oh my god.
Oh, so pro tip, if you're ever in an elevator and it is free falling, a lot of people think, oh yeah, you should jump, right? And then it'll land before you do. Apparently that doesn't work. You're just going to end up being jam. What you want to do is lie down flat, starfish style, spread out your mass as much as possible. And that'll give you, not great odds, but better odds than simply standing upright, because if you're standing upright, all the mass from your body will just get compressed into your shoes. And you're gonna have a bad time. Yeah. So if you're in a free falling elevator, lie down flat, spread your arms and legs out, spread your mass around.
So I did the wrong thing. Quietly grabbing the side and saying, "This is how I die."
Welcome to
y'all
Momentous
better
Live.
hope. Y'all better hope you are not in an elevator with me if that ever happens, because I will push. I will freak out.
The funny thing too is so I got out and I was walking to a store or something, and a block later, I wanted to go back and give that guy a piece of my mind. How dare you! But yeah, it was the moment was well over by the time I got back there. So,
Will, you could have sued.
Welcome to Momentous Live, where we feature how to survive disasters, natural and man-made. Gray, how about you? Any near-death experiences due to the forces of nature or sloppy elevator technicians?
I don't know that I'd say it was a life-threatening thing, but the atmospheric river that came through in September of last year, we were camping at Harrison Lake over in a place called Camp Cove. It's just a little inlet that's on the east side of the mountain facing Harrison. And we had 2 shift pods, 2 SUVs camped up where there was a concrete pad, and then down towards the water, we had some tents, some RVs, that sort of thing. I started to get the weather reports coming in, and we weren't going to be able to get out just because of the nature of the road, and there just wasn't time. So we decided to batten down hatches. And so we had a 10 by 10 in between the 2 shift pods. That thing is basically a kite. So I lashed it down to the trees, the cars, and basically staked everything down as tight as we could. Those shift pods are actually good. Winds up to 150 kilometers per hour. Winds got to about 80. But that alone was terrifying, because it was hammering down. So much rain, so much wind. The folks that were camped on the shore, God bless them, they had some tarps up, but apparently they had this much water in by the end of the storm. We had one RV that got hit by a tree limb, and throughout that entire thing, I was the one who decided, out of everyone who's camping, I'm going to remain sober, which was essential to us getting through this, because it was able to sort of figure out where everything went, but also the most terrifying, because you don't have anything really between you and the horror of nature at its fiercest. Seeing the sunrise the next day, seeing the clouds part and the sun come through, was probably one of my happiest sights in my life, because it scared the hell out of me.
Once you get your Rivian, then you're going to go storm chasing, right?
Right. Just a twist or two. We're due for a sequel.
Cal.
You need the thing on the back with the little probes that go.
Dot 3. Another cow. I think that's the same cow.
Speaking of probes, how about Google? Actually, no. Before we get to Google, I just want to go back.
Are they
to
probing SEO? What are they probing?
Probing all the things, all your ports. I had a little airline thing once, heading from Montreal down to Florida, to Miami for in the 90s for a managers conference for my employer at the time, and I had never experienced an air pocket before. And so going along, and then whoo, the whole plane drops, and you figure, well, maybe that was 10 feet or something. It's enough to everyone, people shrieked, and the woman next to me grabbed my arm, looking at each other. Yeah. And that when you hit an air pocket, you're not dropping 10 feet. It's more like 100 feet. Yeah. And it's so. That's when they say your stomach is in your throat, it literally felt like that happened there. So, again, another hand-holding moment with a stranger. Just like
I wish there was a stranger in my elevator.
And then you can stand on top of their body.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
All right, back to probing. Google is bringing Chrome OS to PCs and Macs. And those who've been paying attention know that a lot of us here like to breathe new life into old tech whenever possible, so we don't just end up with more e-waste than necessary. And that is one thing with various hardware vendors and operating system vendors such as Microsoft and Apple, and how long they decide to support hardware. And here's another option. Some people have been taking Macs and PCs from, say, the 90s or maybe even the 2000s and running various flavors of Linux on them. I hear 2022 is going to be the year of Linux on the desktop. What do you think, Grant?
At long last, yes.
But basically, I mean, Google Chrome is just like a more consumer-friendly version of Linux on the desktop, kind ofly, but it's really just a web browser. But this is a way to extend the life of older hardware that maybe couldn't run Mac OS or Windows terribly well anymore. And as our official Google correspondent, Tasia, I'm going to throw to you and think, what are your thoughts on this initiative here? What's in it for Google with their new version of Chrome OS called Chrome OS Flex, which is initially designed for businesses and schools, and apparently can be installed within minutes. What's their angle?
I think basically they're just trying to get an operating system in front of more people, under the guise of, not like reducing e-waste, which is great. Because I already think of it like my mom has 2 old laptops, 2 old Dells. I'm looking at an old HP that Brett has that literally the other day he was just cursing about, like, this thing is so slow, and I just thought, this could be a good laptop to try this on. However, even Google is not recommending that you just go ahead and install this now and wipe your system and use this Flex. They're saying download it to a thumb drive, play around with it a little bit, see what you think. It's also important to note that this is kind of still in the early stages. I don't want to call it a beta, but it's not really.
We'll call it an alpha.
Yeah, it's not really made for the masses quite yet. So, if you're tinkering and you have an old device that you really don't care about, and maybe it's already wiped or, who cares, maybe you could do that. But other than that, I wouldn't be right now rushing to test this on a working device of yours. But I think it's cool because it's an easy way for people to have a streamlined operating system. I think of my parents or something, where it's they're worried about things like security. They really only use their laptops for sending emails, which they're on Gmail, so they're already kind of in that Google ecosystem. They surf the web. They do very little anything else online. They don't have a lot of programs they need on their computer in terms of processing, so Word or anything like that. So things I think it could be really interesting for a certain market is what I'm saying.
And Chrome OS, especially on Chromebooks, has been amazingly popular for education. They're just dominating. They're edging out Windows and Mac OS to a large degree, largely because it can be run on very inexpensive hardware. You pick up Chromebooks for a couple $100 Canadian, and they're not the best machines in the world. I mean, you can spend $1,000 on a Chromebook if you want for something that's a bit peppier. But since the system requirements tend to be so minimal, that's what really opens the door for users to be able to repurpose some of this old hardware, and that's running this much lighter OS, because in a lot of senses it's basically minimal OS with a web browser. The web browser has become an operating system in a lot of senses nowadays. So one of the issues with older hardware that can't run modern versions of Windows and Mac OS sometimes is that it can be hard to find web browsers that work properly, that can play the right security song and dance with modern websites as regards digital certificates and all that sort of thing. So to be able to run something a bit more current, and Chrome OS being the browser at its core really opens that door up. So you could repurpose an old laptop or even a desktop for another family member, a senior in your family, or some kids in your family, someone that maybe doesn't have super advanced needs but is looking to stay online with with email, maybe messaging, maybe some light web surfing, watching YouTube and whatnot. Maybe scaled down, 360p. You're not going to be streaming 4K on some of those older devices. But I think this is another great example of a way to help reduce waste and extend the useful life of a lot of these sorts of devices that we like to upgrade reasonably frequently.
We talk a lot about accessible tech too, and it's kind of an extension of that in a way, because now all of a sudden, like, these old laptops don't just have to be recycled. They can go to somebody in need, and this can be installed, and now they have access to the internet, and they may not have been able to afford that, and they may not have been able to do, their online schooling or whatever, and now they can. So I think it's a good step in the right direction.
So Linus actually from Linus Tech Tips, posted a video not too long back where he purported, I was forced to buy a Chromebook because the curriculum focuses on Chromebooks in that particular class for one of his kids. This actually opens up a couple of opportunities. One, you don't have to buy a Chromebook anymore if you've got an older device that you can put that on. But two, if you have a newer device, being able to virtualize this isn't something that would be out of the question. Being able to run this inside a virtual environment. So, you've got your regular computer for everyday stuff. And if you're in a class that requires a Chromebook, kind of launch this operating system as an application, and then use it within. And when you're done, shut it down. So
that is a great point. The real advantage of being able to spin up virtual machines, do what you got to do, and then shut them down and protect from the rest of your system is quite handy. Anyway, thumbs up, I think, all around from the Momentous crew on this sort of initiative. Mm-hmm. All right. And we'll add a link to Linus's video as well. So speaking of usable life and new gadgets, Samsung, the day after our last Momentous Live, which was last Tuesday, so last Wednesday, we just missed it, was their Samsung Galaxy Unpacked event featuring the various flavors of the Galaxy S22. So there was the Galaxy S22, the S22 Plus, and the S22 Ultra. And for those who are paying attention, the S22 Ultra is just basically a renamed version of the Note. Because last year when we didn't get a new Note in the fall, when they're often announced, a lot of people were saying, is the Note dead? Well, in name only, it's dead, but it's kind of been reborn in the form of the S22 Ultra. So it's got a little bit of a different look to it. It comes with the S Pen. The responsiveness has been cranked up. And of course, there are various features and options from between the S22, the 22 Plus, and the 22 Ultra, including tiers of RAM and all that sort of stuff, all the speeds and feeds. We'll include links to all that. But it wasn't just about the phones. They also announced Galaxy Tab S8, the S8 Plus, and the Tab S8 Ultra. And by all accounts, over the last couple of years, Samsung has been upping its tablet game because the tablets have been dominated by Apple so tremendously in the last number of years. I remember one quote a few years ago, it's like, there's no tablet market, there's the iPad market. Because Android tablets, and thanks to the lack of decent tablet-specific features in Android, was the tablet market for Android was just not that great. The apps wouldn't be sized properly. It was tricky to design for, et cetera, et cetera. And it was just a bit of a backwater, so to speak. But Samsung, leveraging their dominant position in the smartphone space and using a lot of their experience there, several iterations, that's one thing that you can give Samsung credit for, is they'll keep trying. I remember when the Note first came on, a lot of us, I think, were working for the same company at the time. And people are like, what? This is too big. This is dumb. You had the whole phablet name coming through. But they were ahead of the game. Samsung likes to try stuff out. And they just keep tweaking and tweaking and refining and refining. Next thing you know, you got something's pretty done. And the Note is pretty well done. And the Note is well loved by a certain class of users. So there may be people who buy the Ultra just because they want the biggest and the best specs, and just end up with the S Pen and not using it. Fine. But then now we have these tablet options, which can be pretty handy for people that don't necessarily want an iPad. Maybe they live more in the Google ecosystem, and there's maybe not a Chromebook that meets their needs, or a convertible or a pure tablet that meets their needs. So that was the bulk of the announcements were the hardware ones. There were some other features announced, like live sharing feature in Google Duo, which I didn't even know still existed. Another one of their communication services there, allowing you to share the same notes, photos, and more at the same time when you're chatting with someone. Only supported by Galaxy and Pixel devices at the time. And one of the things I've also heard in this whole process is that it seems that Samsung's OS releases have been a bit more stable than Google's own OS releases. I mean, they're both running Android, but Samsung's got their own, tweaked up version. And that's one of the things that some people in the Samsung world have been saying is that they're just not seeing as many of the glitches that some folks on the Pixel side have been saying that we spoke about in previous weeks. So starting with you, Tasia, any thoughts? You have one foot in the Android ecosystem with your Pixel that you got last year, the Pixel 6 or the 6 Pro? I can never remember.
6 Pro.
Yeah. So based on your experience with that, what do you see anything here that appeals to you? Whether Samsung has really been upping their camera game over the last few years, cranking the megapixel counts, also the number of sensors and so on. Tremendous zoom. I mean, we all know it's not all about megapixels. It's about pixel size, about quality of the glass and whatnot. But looking at these the phone and tablet offerings, what are your initial thoughts when you look at them?
Well, I feel like for the Samsung Galaxy line, they're kind of, maybe not even just in the Android space, they're kind of the top tier when it comes to smartphone cameras. Everybody will argue different things on that, but I feel like they've been ahead of the game for a really long time. I don't necessarily know. I mean, it's definitely not enough to get me to switch to Android. Y'all know that already. I love the Pixel 6 Pro and I'm obsessed with the camera, but it's not going to be my full-time driver. I just do not like, I feel like the entire back at some point is just going to be all lenses. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like we're just going to keep getting more lenses on these
One
things.
big lens or just 1,000 small lenses?
There's going to be a million lenses on the back. Like
poor people with trypophobia. It's just holes everywhere. They're looking at me.
Exactly. I don't know. I get really, like, I already find, like I accidentally touch. Do you guys ever do that where you're like, oh no, I've picked my phone up wrong and I've touched the lens, and you're like, ah. I don't know. Running it down vertically like that, I don't know. I mean, if they want to send me one for free, I'll try it, but
that's Tasia's new motto.
If you want to send it to me for free with no strings attached, I'll try it.
Will, anything to tempt you here on the smartphone or tablet side? Yeah, I know you're pretty knee deep in the Apple ecosystem here, but
not so much. My wife has an Android tablet. She likes that they're smaller. They offer a little bit more, I guess, for her and some of the functionality because she's in the Android ecosystem. But for me, it's once you go Apple.
You know what they say.
Yeah, you know what they say. Wait, we'll have to take all those end caps back. Anyways, nobody knows that reference. Tristan does.
So, Gray, just what is the significance in your mind of what we're seeing here from Samsung, either on an iterative basis or on a market leading basis in the Android or even versus Apple landscape? Obviously, you are pretty deep in the Apple ecosystem as well as all. We were hoping to have our friend of the show, Jamie Reynolds, join us today, but he was a little under the weather, so he wasn't able to join us. And he has had a couple of Samsung phones in a row over the last number of years and really enjoys them, especially the camera features there. But Graham, what's your take on this latest batch from Samsung? Because they're just relentless, iterating every year, and they seem to be largely unmatched, with maybe Google Pixel nipping at their heels.
Well, I think this is the thing that Samsung has figured out, right? They've tried for a long time to sway iPhone users, and I think they've realized that there's not going to be a lot of market share coming from that particular direction. Fighting a war that you're looking at different features, different cycles, different software systems. It's an unequal playing ground, an unequal battlefield for them. Apple having all of that vertical integration with software and hardware in house they're rolling new features that people are looking for that then trickle down to Android. Which, when you take a look at things, that's not to say that Android hasn't had its share of leading moments, right? Notifications being a huge one. But when we take a look at this device, and for the last 2 or 3 years, this feels like it's following in lockstep behind the iPhone. And that's actually fine, right? Samsung went through their process of trying to beat Apple, and instead looked at it and went, we don't have to beat Apple. We just have to beat everybody else. And the folks that are putting out phones in the Android market, I think, so the consensus was here. Samsung is probably one of the best that you can go with. You'll see your Oppo people and your OnePlus people, and they're little dedicated clans. But when it comes down to it, the vast majority of people probably know the name Samsung. Samsung is Android to them, so you don't have to go and do anything crazy. At least not until you've got something crazy from your R&D department. You have to chase it. If it comes, this will be great for them. But this is, if you're in the market for a brand new Android phone, and you want an iPhone-like experience, this is going to be it. So
Great.
for a lot of people, this is par for the course.
Great. I love that imagery. It's like Apple's like Rome, and then the Huns are like the clan Android. It's like they're just a bunch of loose-knit groups that are attacking at the gates.
That is precisely what I meant. I just want to take the opportunity to point out that a few of the some of the clip here from the Samsung Galaxy Unpacked 2022 in under 10 minutes from Engadget, the tablet they feature has a notch.
A notch.
After
is such a notch.
Samsung has been poking fun at Apple for years, right? So, Gray, you had mentioned you'd said the phrase "following along Apple" there. I would push back just a little bit on that, and I think what we're seeing between Apple and Samsung is almost more like a gentle leapfrogging. Like, because their cycle seems to be half a year from each other, you'll see some features that end up in Samsung phones first. And then some of those features will end up in the iPhones in the fall. And then in those iPhones in the fall, you'll see some features that aren't in the previous Samsung iterations, but they show up in the spring. So we they're keeping each other honest in a way too. And we all, like we mentioned here before, like competition is good. If not for Samsung, it would be easier for Apple to become more complacent, and
for sure,
perhaps vice versa to a certain extent. Although there's ostensibly more competition in the Android side of things.
The thing is, I was trying to think in the last 3 years what features Android had brought out at the beginning of the year that Apple had rolled out later, and I couldn't think of one.
Well, it's a lot of it photography based, I would say, for sure. But with Samsung and Google leading the way there, I think Apple's been playing catch up with like night modes. We still don't have like a decent
night shot is the one that I can think of, but that was 4 years ago.
Yeah. Astrophotography is like kind of the next extension of that. I mean, and to be fair, we are in a mature space, and we're getting into more niche type features here. But
I was just going to say though, the last minute of the video that you've had on your screen, if you look at it, it goes everything from multitasking, which is the same implementation as the iPad, to auto tracking, which is center stage, so all these features were like bang, 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 bang. Oh, the PC-like experience, which is the Magic Keyboard. Like if you were to sort of squint a little bit and not read the text, it looked like an Apple ad.
So
with features that Apple rolled out 2 years ago.
but in the interest of balance, Apple still doesn't have an under-screen fingerprint sensor, for example. And rumors are they might be coming. Apple has been really gone hard into Face ID, of course. They're still doing Touch ID in the the iPhone SE, which is due to be replaced soon, maybe even as soon as next month, and even in the side buttons on the some of the newer iPads. But they still haven't cracked the under the screen fingerprint sensor or some of the other camera array stuff behind the screen, which has its pros and cons, as we've talked about before too. So competition's good, and I think there's we always, that's what's exciting about what we get to do as enthusiasts and as followers of these industries is see these things. Oh man, I wish we had that in my brand of choice, and maybe it'll be coming soon. Maybe we'll have to wait a little longer, and it's all about trade-offs, right? There are certain benefits to being in the Apple ecosystem, certain benefits to being in the Android ecosystem, much of which includes like the variety of vendors there. But then it's kind of like the Windows as well too. It's a little bit more Wild West. So so that's our Samsung Galaxy Unpacked and there'll be another Unpacked event probably in the fall, if not sooner. So let's move on to just a little bit of entertainment news. We won't spend too much time on this until we get a trailer, but just got word this week. Blade Runner 2029 live action TV series coming on Amazon Prime, and Ridley Scott will be, I think, producing, or at least executive producing that, maybe doing some direction, at least first couple episodes. Of course, Ridley Scott has been heavily involved with Raised by Wolves, which is another fantastic hard sci-fi series. So real quick, round robin. Tasia, Blade Runner 2099, do you care?
Nope.
Oh, hard pass. All right. Will?
Super psyched.
All right.
I love the Blade Runner franchise. I wrote some papers on it and the book it's based off of in university. I took a dystopian literature course. Huge fan. I'm not as crazy a fan as the person that needs 22 recuts. The director's final cut in a bulletproof Samsonite case that was released a decade ago.
I feel targeted.
Yeah. But
it was a gift.
I may be one of the 5 people that really, really loved the last Blade Runner, that came out a few years back. Tristan, you and I saw it in IMAX, and it was I have to tell you, it was one of the best cinematic experiences I've ever had in my life. Just how that film was shot, the score, the soundtrack, just IMAX was perfect for that. I don't think I've ever seen a movie that was so perfect for IMAX. It was really good. I don't know, and I think maybe we splurged and sat in the center. Usually I sit on the P aisle so I can get a quick exit, but we sat right dead center in the IMAX, and it was just a wonderful
and held it. Gray, do you trust Amazon to get this right?
I do. The stuff that they've done in the last little while has actually been quite good. This took me right off baseline. It was great. Blade Runner 2049 was universally acclaimed, right? It's got an 81% on Rotten Tomatoes for audience score and an 88%
critically
on
acclaimed.
Tomato.
But not people I knew. Just about everyone I talked to.
You to know better people.
Apparently.
Yeah, exactly. Time to disown some friends.
Yeah.
But to be fair,
they don't bother you again.
It was 2 3/4 hours. So I've talked to some people who felt the same way, to be fair. But I loved it, and a lot of us, genre enthusiasts loved it. Tasia apparently, and did you see either of the Blade Runner movies, Tasia? All right, so there you go.
Oh.
So that's your homework.
And definitely agree with critically acclaimed, but in my friend circle, I think it's you, me, and Tristan who are fans. A lot of people, I think one of the surprises too is people expect from the Blade Runner movies that they're going to be big, epic action movies. And there are little glimpses of that in the first one, but certainly this was way more cerebral in 2049, and many people I talked to were just turned off. They fell asleep during it or something like that. So I don't know.
Yeah, because the original was like noir in the rain, and the second one was like noir in the desert.
Well, it's curious. You talk about alternate versions. One thing that's worth looking out for, there is the original cut, which has the score, I believe it was Tangerine Dream, did it maybe? Or is that Legend? I can't remember. But there's an original score, and then
Vangelis did the original for the first Blade Runner.
Yeah, and and then Tangerine Dream had replaced it as part of the original theatrical cut, and so they returned it in the director's cut. And also, there's narration in the theatrical cut, which is not in the director's cut. Tasia, I know this sounds. It's a really, really good movie about the nature of humanity. The first one, go check it out, please.
We won't even get into the glinting eyeballs or anything.
And the second one has Ryan Gosling for 2 3/4 hours. It's
there you go.
Worth your time.
I had a Zoom call with a prospective client last week who was dead ringer for Ryan Gosling, and I was just so entranced by those dreamy brown eyes. Okay, so you're not buying it with the Blade Runner yet. How about all the news that dropped from Paramount Pictures? We've got. And I want to know from you, if you had to pick one of these, maybe you're not as hardcore a genre, film enthusiast as maybe some of the rest of us here, but we got announcements from Paramount Plus on finally a new Kelvin Universe Star Trek movie, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Will Silver, a new Sonic movie, Again, with the return of Idris Elba,
Idris.
voicing Knuckles. And a new Transformers movie. I believe was it a Transformers movie? A Rise of the Beasts.
Yeah.
And
Animated as well.
Halo. And was it Halo? Was that a movie or a TV show?
It's a TV show.
TV show. Okay,
Yep.
so Tasia, take your pick of those 5. Or are
Teenage
you
Mutant
out
Ninja Turtles.
Yes.
Oh, all right. Okay.
100%.
Do you have a number 2, or do the rest just do?
What's Chris Pine in?
Star Trek.
Is he shirtless?
That would be. Let me change my answer. Look at that look. Hello.
I know, right? He's
That's-
one of the many Chris's. So it's going to be interesting if they do this, because we are about to enjoy sometime soon the new limited series of Star Trek: Strange New Worlds, featuring Captain Pike, who plays the
Anson
mentor.
Mount.
Yeah, Anson Mount, who plays the mentor to Captain Kirk, and there's a Pike in the first. Is it just the first of the new Star Trek movies, or was he in a couple of them as well?
He was in both of them.
Okay,
Actually, yeah, he was
There are
in
all 3.
because he gets injured in Into Darkness. Right? That's why he's in a wheelchair.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And but we've got a different Spock in here than there's going to be in Strange New Worlds. With you've got Zachary Quinto in the Kelvin universe. So again, these are
And Ethan Peck in Strange New Worlds.
yes. So we've got the the 2. I mean, it's, to be fair, it's a different timeline. Anything goes, but it's just kind of neat. I'm always worried about like Star Trek saturation, just like I'm always worried about Star Wars saturation in these new Paramount Plus and Disney Plus universes. But what a time to be alive.
Yeah.
So Gray, what's your top pick of these 5?
To be honest, like I'm stoked for Star Trek. Like it's going to be great. It's sad that Anton Yelchin won't be with us anymore. He played Chekhov and unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago. But it's great to be able to go. And I'd like some closure on this one.
Yeah.
It's Beyond Star Trek Beyond was great. Like Into Darkness, I felt stumbled a little bit. Whereas Star Trek Beyond felt like a return to Star Trek. It felt really quite good. But we never really got a trip with the refit, rebuilt Enterprise A. So I'm excited to see where that goes. It's a beautiful ship. I'm excited for it. Halo, incidentally enough, the Halo original made-for-TV movie that was part of Halo 5, I think, was shot up at SFU, which was kind of neat. I was looking around.
Simon Fraser University, for those not in the area.
We were, I think, Pokemon going, or possibly ingressing. I can't remember. But we were up there, and I was like, I remember this spot. They shot it in Ontario for the first 5 episodes, and then went off to Budapest for this new series. So it should be pretty cool to see.
Budapest. So how about your number 2, Gray, real quick?
On these guys, probably Sonic the Hedgehog. I know that sounds crazy, but the first movie I thought was so much fun. I'm excited to see what Jim Carrey does as Dr. Robotnik, the Eggman. So, yeah, I'm 41 years old and stoked about a Sonic movie. This is exactly where I thought I would be in life.
Will, your number 1 and number 2? Are you going Turtle Town and all the way?
I think it's Turtle Town and then Star Trek.
No Transformers.
Yeah, no, those are my 2 ones. I'm like Ray. I want to see the whole trilogy sort of complete or some closure. And I think Gray probably takes the prize as the biggest Trekker here, but I've got a huge soft spot. I'm a huge Trekkie, and Trekkie, whatever you want to call it. I appreciate the Star Trek. So I'm looking forward to that. But Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles just touches a particular childhood part of my psyche. And you were waiting for the end
sewer
of that.
drilling part.
Yeah. So there's just something really, really innocent about it for me. I think some of the Michael Bay movies went a little bit too much, a little bit too mature, but there's some great animated movies and TV shows.
Side,
the live action show from the 90s shot in Vancouver is epic. If you ever get a hold of it, it's horrible and great at the same time. I highly recommend it. 30-minute, half an hour show that was on Fox. So there was a female Ninja Turtle with a pink headband. So yeah,
Naturally.
because
So
that's
did you
the way
say there
it
was a
in the
Michael
90s.
Bay directed Turtles movie?
Who? Or no, he produced it.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
gotcha.
he produced it.
So speaking of Michael Bay, I'm curious about the Transformers, the Beast one, Rise of the Beasts, because I think there was definitely diminishing returns in the Transformer movies. I mean, they had a hard dip with number 2, and they recovered a little bit, but then there was Bumblebee, which by all accounts was really breathed new life into the Transformers franchise. Fantasia, Bumblebee, you might like it. Haley Steinfeld.
I do like her.
There you go. It's got some feels in it. I really enjoyed that. So if they learn from that, maybe Rise of the Beasts will be more than just like rock'em sock'em robots and questionable racial stereotypes built into their robots. So while we're on this tip, we've also had a new trailer drop for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which is, of course, amazing. And we're pulling in some imagery that we saw in the What If series as well. Any thoughts on this from so Tasia, we'll start with you. How stoked are you? Okay,
you can
next.
pass on this one.
Great.
Wow. Like, this just looks incredible. When you go through sort of frame by frame, which is what we all do with trailers now, you
everyone needs a hobby.
It looks like there's an Iron Man in here, which is interesting because Kevin Feige had basically said that Iron Man is a non-starter in a lot of these places. This is going to be mind-bending, and I'm super excited for it.
Directed by Sam Raimi, who directed the original Spider-Man trilogy movie. So that's exciting as well. Will, any quick thoughts on
I'll try to keep it quick. It's epic. And there's very few times I feel like in nerd geek culture fiction where there's like audible nerdgasms across the world. And I feel like when Patrick Stewart makes a brief audio appearance, like people around the world all screamed in unison. It was
so
just
Star Trek: The Next Generation is somehow merging,
crossing over.
I'm here for it.
They're crossing the streams.
So do we think that's actually Professor?
Yes,
that is the rumor.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
next question.
Yeah. So I think that was just an amazing moment. There's a lot of speculation about Iron Man and if he's coming, or if that was Monica Rambeau in certain shots. So it's hard to know, but there is the persistent rumor that Tom Cruise is going to be a superior Iron Man, which is a character from the comic books, which is kind of like Ultron meets Iron Man. We saw some Ultron Doom Body Sentry things, so that leads to a lot of that speculation. I could break down all the iconography if you want, but we got to go to sleep at some point. So we'll talk about that another day. I'm sure Gray and I could wax poetic for hours.
Wax on, wax off. Okay, so just since we included it in the description, we need to hit this because it's also timely as well. I know we're all big Sportsball fans here, especially NFL football. I would say that I'm probably most casual of football fans, but the more, just like with any sport or any video game or whatever it is, the more you know about it, the more you can appreciate it. And what I always say to people is, like, football is a lot like chess. Like, when you understand it, there's some interesting stuff there, especially in the last 2 minutes of any serious game. And this Super Bowl was no exception. It had a tough act to follow with the playoff games in previous weeks. Apparently there were some quite good ones there, but this was the only NFL game I watched of probably in a couple of years. I missed last year's Super Bowl. So, but one of the things that people watch the Super Bowl for is, of course, the legendary slate of commercials. And there were a lot of them this year, and including a number of links in the show notes that have links to YouTube versions of a lot of these commercials. Some of them are extended versions as well. So very quickly, starting with you, Tasia, which of the commercials that you saw from the Super Bowl caught your attention and why?
I'm going to leave one of my favorites for Will, because I know he has the same one, that featured featured Arnold Schwarzenegger. But I'm gonna go with the one with Paul Rudd and Seth Rogen for Lay's potato chips. I liked it a lot.
Why did you like that?
Because I like them and it was funny. And some of the commercials just were like, and also it wasn't a crypto commercial. And I was like, thank you,
Oh,
Jesus. I have had enough of the crypto commercials. But it was just a cute little commercial with them. Yeah.
They're great together too.
They are really great together. And he does not age. So, you know.
No, Paul Rudd made a deal with the devil somewhere there. And we got some Canadian content with Seth Rogen, which is always nice. How about you, Gray?
Honestly, I know it's me, but the crypto commercials I thought were good. You know, the scannable for, I think it was Coinbase, the QR code. Which,
we'll save that for the end. Yeah.
We'll talk about that. The Crypto.com one with LeBron James and the FTX with Larry David. The FTX one I thought was very funny. It's just it's funny. We just had this moment of I'm so tired of the crypto, and it's like okay, cool. Don't want you to miss out.
No, I have to admit, I definitely lolled on that one. So many different settings and costumes and whatnot. The production values in that Larry David FTX one. So definitely worth checking out, even if you're not a huge crypto fan. Of course, some people are people are hot and cold on Larry David himself. He's got a particular style of humor and affect.
So funny.
But I quite enjoyed that one myself as well.
His nobody can. Quite like he can.
Yeah, so basically they're saying don't be like Larry David. Don't miss out on the latest revolution like his character missed out on throughout history, apparently. How about you, Will?
So, Tasia, thank you. My favorite was the Arnold Schwarzenegger commercial with the BMW electric SUV. I actually really like the grille on that SUV. But I think the star of the show is Peggy the Pegasus. I actually want a Pegasus more than I want that car. I want a little Pegasus horse to run around, and Peggy, I think they're winged horses. That one's named Peggy. But yes, so the winged horse is the win for me. I think a very close. There we go. The close runner-up is actually the Colin Jost commercial with Scarlett Johansson, and I'm surprised nobody picked that because it's Alexa. So very funny sort of technology gone wrong. So two very momentous picks: a car commercial and Alexa. So there you go.
Very on brand.
Very on brand.
What are yours, TJ?
Oh, I don't even remember anymore. So what I'll do is I'll throw to the Coinbase one and let Gray riff on that a little bit. And I've actually got it queued up for those of you who haven't seen it, because Ahmed is a minute of this. Now, does this bring back any 90s vibes for any of you?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. You got your screensaver on your DVD player with the DVD video logo would be bouncing around, and then you're always waiting for when it hits a corner.
Yes.
Like, oh, that's exciting, right? So, I mean, you gotta love the ballsiness of this, and it had a little bit of mellow electronic music playing in there, and some of the comments, some people are just confused, and others are like, that's exactly what I needed to break up the intensity of the game, and so
genius.
on. So, and at the very end, there's just like a little almost like a blip for it that it said Coinbase, etc. But the key thing in here, and this is something that has really been resurrected in the last couple of years thanks to the pandemic and people dining out and not having physical menus to touch and whatnot, is the QR code, which I affectionately refer to as robot barf. Gray, can you just explain what's going on there? Like, what was that QR code for?
I don't know. I didn't scan it.
Oh, okay.
It just went right to Coinbase.
Did it? Okay, so here's the thing. I'm not going to scan a random QR code that's on my TV.
Yeah.
But why not?
I'm a little sensitive about these things. Basically, what it does is it sends you to a web address. But that's not the only thing that it can do. QR codes can do a whole bunch of different things inside their protocol. I've actually got a subscription for dynamic QR codes where I can make it point to one thing one day and then have it do something else the next day, because it's basically routing through a server. But you could have these things sending you anywhere, to phishing sites, to any sorts of nefarious places. Don't scan random QR codes, people. Just don't do it.
Don't do it. I'm trying to remember which was the ad that really. There's one that I was literally lolling, and it was not one of the ones that we've talked about yet, and it definitely was not the Dr. Evil one.
Was it the Snoop Dogg?
No, I don't know. I mean, I get the Snoop Dogg and Martha Stewart ones; they're fine. But yeah, okay, it's weed jokes, whatever. I guess I should have been more prepared. There was one that you guys didn't like vamp long enough for me to be able to go and find it. Oh well, not that important. If I think of it, well, we got a couple of things, a couple projects to talk about real quick here. So, but Tasia, what do you got? So that's, and if I get to it in time, then we'll talk about me. Otherwise, I'll save it for next week because I'm just bad at my job. Tasia, what did you do this week?
I collaborated with a very special guest.
Whoop whoop.
The one and only Gray Williams. And we chatted all things metaverse. So because of Gray, I'm now basically like a metaverse expert. Not to brag. We're in it right now.
Wow.
We're not really here.
Yeah. And then today I cut a podcast out of it. So
Woo.
Again, content. But seriously, if you have not watched it yet, or if you're wondering what the heck the metaverse is, what the blockchain has to do with it, what are the safety implications of the metaverse, how it works. I mean, we talk about a lot of stuff, and like Gray did a really great job of just breaking it down in ways we can all understand. It was fun.
Honestly, it felt like it went by in just a few minutes, and I looked down at that video. That's 20 minutes long. We had a good chat. Yeah,
I know. It was awesome.
And Gray, what was you? How did it feel to be, just one-on-one with Tasia and her, in
my
her
hard-hitting journalistic questions. So, what you're saying is,
if you were a tree, what type of tree would you be?
Stumped. I've done a lot of interviews like this for CBC in the past, and Tasia basically standing in for your audience and being able to ask the questions that you think they are asking you. It's just a great conversational thing, and so it's nice to be able to. I've been deep in this for years, and the last I think probably 2 or 3 months have been the most intense of it, and so being able to talk to friends about this is really cool. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks for doing it. We
Anytime.
nerded out and had so much fun. And then we kept texting each other like, this was so fun.
Once we
I'm
guess
gonna
what,
creep
let's
him
do it.
out. Yeah, if I tell him one more time how much fun I had.
I do have to apologize though. Next week after our show, I become a non-entity for a little while because Destiny 2: The Witch Queen is coming out. So get your calls in before that.
Okay.
So you can find Tasia's work at tasiacustodi.com, where she has links to her YouTube videos and her podcast episodes, and of course at youtube.com/Tasia Custodi. And team, I did it. I actually with all the different tabs and links that are up, I found it. I found the ad that I was thinking of, and it like I said, it literally made me lol. And it was the Uber Don't Eat one. It was the one that I was least expecting to be amused by, but it was basically just people, a series of people, including many celebrities, just expressing their confusion and dismay at all the different things that Uber Eats delivers that aren't food. And you have people checking on diapers, for example, but it was just like a series of cat litter, like dish soap and whatnot. And it was just and then of course Gwyneth Paltrow with her infamous candle saying it tastes like something. I can't put my finger on it. I was like, oh my! So they just kept upping it and upping it and upping it, and just the visceral reaction by people spitting out these things that they shouldn't be eating. I had to, putting sunscreen on hot dogs. It was just like I'm like babbling like an idiot right now because. You guys remember? I think Will and Gray, you would. There was back in the day, a former employer and client, employer of one of us, a client of two of us, that had a commercial where someone was trying to get sick so they could stay home and watch the big screen TV, and it was referred to as the snotty Kleenex commercial.
Yes.
And we had so many emails about that. People like so disgusted by someone consuming snotty Kleenex on broadcast television. But there's like, it's kind of like, it's almost like that body horror thing kind of kicks in, the visceral reaction when people are consuming things that they're not supposed to be. So that's, I guess, what really got to me. And I feel it in my cheeks right now.
Yeah.
Don't eat dish soap or diapers or cat litter or antiperspirant. That's, if there's one thing that hopefully, one message we want you to go away with today, people, is don't eat those things. Stick to food, even though it does say
food is yummy.
Tide Pods, exactly.
Tide Pods.
With that,
so of course, once again, thank you, Tasia, Gray, Will. You can find out more about us at momentous.tv, twitter.com/momentous.tv, facebook.com/momentous.tv, instagram.com/momentous.tv. On YouTube, search my name and look for the Momentous playlist there. And to the three of you, and to the three of you that might be watching, we hope your week is truly momentous. I should hit the right button. Should I actually hit the correct button?